Okay, we're going to call the regular meeting to order. The notice requirements provided in the Open Public Meetings Act have been satisfied. Notice that this meeting was properly given in the new schedule of meetings at the Spotswood Borough Council on December 30th, 2016. The new schedule was transmitted to the Home News Tribune and the Sentinel. It was filed with the Clerk of the Borough of Spotswood and posted in the municipal building located at 77 Summerhill Road, Spotswood, New Jersey. This time I'm going to ask everyone to rise, salute the flag in a moment of silence. If today we can remember our veterans, and also if we can remember Michael Greenstein, who is the husband of our state senator, Linda Greenstein. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Stollen?
Here.
Councilwoman Drozd?
Here.
Councilman Melillo?
Here.
Councilman Rivera?
Here.
Council President Ricci?
Here.
Mayor Sealy?
I'm still here.
We have a set of minutes from October 11, 2017 for a regular meeting.
Approve the minutes of October 11th?
Yeah, second.
Councilman Stollen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Drozd?
Yes.
Councilman Melillo?
Yes.
Councilman Rivera?
Yes.
Council President Ricci?
Yes.
We have ordinance on second reading. This is the public hearing. Ordinance 2017-15 was posted in the municipal building on October 24th, 2017, and advertised by summary in the Home News on October 26th. Public hearing was set for November 8th. Ordinance 2017-15, bond ordinance, amending part bond ordinance number 2017-05J, adopted on July 17th, providing for the cleaning, cement lining, and replacement of water mains within the cottage streets area in order to increase the appropriation, therefore, by $150,000 for a total appropriation of $1,400,000 to increase the authorized bonds and notes to be issued to finance a portion of the cost thereof by $153,000 for a total debt authorization of $1,400,000 and to increase the allocation of the appropriation to costs permitted under NJSA 48:2-20 authorized in and by the Borough of Spotswood in the County of Middlesex, New Jersey.
Make the motion, we open this ordinance for a hearing?
Second?
Councilman Stollen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Drozd?
Yes.
Councilman Melillo?
Yes.
Councilman Rivera?
Yes.
Council President Ricci?
Yes. Is there anyone that would like to come forward and discuss anything on this particular ordinance?
Can we know where the streets are? I don't know where the cottage streets are.
Cheryl, the cottage streets are everything as you're going up Mundy on the left side.
Oh, okay.
It's all those streets in there by the park on the left.
Make a motion to close the hearing?
Second.
Councilman Stollen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Drozd? Councilman Melillo?
Yes.
Councilman Rivera?
Yes.
Council President Ricci?
Yes. This time I move the ordinance be adopted on second and final reading and published according to law.
Second?
Councilman Stollen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Drozd?
Yes.
Councilman Melillo?
Yes.
Councilman Rivera?
Yes.
Council President Ricci?
Yes.
We have an ordinance on separate second reading. This public hearing, ordinance 2017-16, was posted in the municipal building on October 24th and advertised by summary in the Home News on October 26th. Public hearing was set for November 8th, 2017. Ordinance 2017-16. Bond ordinance amending in part bond ordinance number 2017-06J, adopted on July 17th, providing for planning and design of various roadway and utility improvements within the Cottage Streets area in order to increase the appropriation therefore by $2,410,000 for a total appropriation of $2,600,000 to increase the authorized bonds and notes to be issued to finance a portion of the cost thereof by $2,410,000 for a total debt authorization of $2,590,000, to increase the allocation of the appropriation to costs permitted under NJSA 40A:2-20, and to expand the scope of improvements to include the construction of various roadway and utility improvements within the Cottage Streets area authorized in and by the Borough of Spotswood in the County of Middlesex, New Jersey.
Make a motion to open for a public hearing?
Second.
Councilman Stollen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Drozd?
Yes.
Councilman Melillo?
Yes.
Councilman Rivera?
Yes.
Council President Ricci.
Yes. At this time, the public portion for this particular ordinance is now open. Is there anyone that would like to come forward and speak on it?
Cheryl Bass, could you be a little bit more specific with utility improvements? Because, with the cell phones and with...
This is
Yeah.
infrastructure. This is not utility in that respect. This is sewers, water, curbing, streets. This is all infrastructure.
Okay, because when they say utility, I'm thinking of
No,
the
this
phone
is-
lines.
This is our infrastructure that's being repaired and replaced.
Okay. And this would be the newest, the most modern, the most up-to-date technology that we're using on the roadways. So,
One would assume.
yeah, one would assume. Okay.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Motion to close?
Second.
Councilman Stollen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Drozd?
Yes.
Councilman Melillo?
Yes.
Councilman Rivera?
Yes.
Council President Ricci.
Yes.
Pass it.
My coding's kicking in. This time I move that this ordinance be adopted on second and final reading, be published according to law.
Second.
Councilman Stollen?
Yes.
Councilwoman
Yes.
Drozd? Councilman Melillo?
Yes.
Councilman Rivera?
Yes.
Council President Ricci.
Yes.
We have another ordinance, second reading, public hearing, ordinance 2017-17 was posted in the municipal building on October 24th and advertised in full in the Home News on October 26th. Public hearing was set for November 8th. Ordinance 2017-17, an ordinance of the Borough of Spotswood, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, authorizing the establishment of a government energy aggregation program.
Make a motion, we open this for a public hearing?
Second.
Councilman Stollen?
Yes.
Second.
Councilman Stollen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Drozd?
Yes.
Councilman Melillo?
Yes.
Councilman Rivera?
Yes.
Council President Ricci.
Yes. Before we open this up to the public, I'd like to bring up Robert Chilton from Gable Associates. He's going to explain this program, how the energy aggregation works, and then whatever questions you have, we'll be able to throw at him.
Okay, thank you for having me this evening. I hope to just give a brief explanation to hopefully make it simple and understandable. Then, as you said, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have or members of the public have. So government energy aggregation is a program that has been on the state law books for about 15 years or so. In the last 5 years has been when this program has actually taken off and started to be successful. Currently, there are roughly about 50 municipalities in the state that have actually implemented a government energy aggregation program. If I may, I use GEA as vernacular, it just saves a few breaths. GEA program, what is it? It allows a municipality to basically put together all of the residential electric accounts in the town and put those out to bid for power supply, to accept bids from third-party suppliers with the aim of getting a price lower than what the utility is charging for the power supply portion. In this case, JCP&L. JCP&L is primarily a delivery company now. They deliver power. They no longer own their own power plants. They buy power in the wholesale market just like everyone else. And if you do not select the third-party supplier, essentially you get JCP&L's default power supply, which they've sourced from the marketplace. Folks are also able to shop on the open market and get their own third-party supplier deals. So this is really a third way of getting power supply, where the town actually puts all the residents together to develop a large pool, develop purchasing power, and to go out to bid for a contract. And the contract has a lot of consumer protections that aren't necessarily in the third-party supplier deals that people get on their own if they're out sort of shopping in the marketplace. As I said, about 50 towns in New Jersey have done this program. The most, I guess, proximate to here would be Monroe Township, has done actually 3 rounds of this. They started their program about 4 years ago. They're now starting their 3rd contract. The average savings for residents in towns, it varies by the town and by the time and the market conditions, but generally speaking, folks have saved about $100 to $200 under the program. That's an average per resident under these types of programs.
It's on a yearly basis?
That's usually over a contract basis, which could be 12 to 18 months. So the savings generally somewhere between $75 a year or $150 a year. Again, it depends. It depends on the program and when you are in the marketplace, et cetera. So the way it works is that, and again, if you were to pass an ordinance like you have under consideration tonight, it doesn't bind you or commit you to anything other than you have formed a program. The next step would be to put together a bidding process to go out to bid for power supply from third-party suppliers. The process is very strictly overseen by the Board of Public Utilities. They have a stack of rules in place that you have to comply with. So the bidding documents would be reviewed by the BPU, and they would sort of oversee the whole process. So if you go through this, you would have bid documents developed. That would be reviewed first by the BPU. You would go out to bid. Third-party suppliers would respond to that bid, and you would essentially be saying, we'd like to get bids for you to supply power for our residents. When the bids come in, the results come back before the governing body. You make the decision whether or not the bid results are favorable enough in your view to warrant the award of a contract. Typically, the benchmark is at least X amount of savings, whether it's 5% or 7%, whatever the number you decide is. And if that is achieved and you award a contract, then all the folks in town are notified of the deal that has been struck, and every resident is given the opportunity to decide whether they want to remove themselves and opt out of the program and remain with JCP&L, or just go off on their own with their own third-party supply deal. So it's basically an open-ended opt-out opportunity that any resident would have to get out of the program. Again, the benchmark is if the contract doesn't save folks money, you do not award the contract, nor can you under the state's regulations. That's basically how the program works. Just again, to emphasize, and some folks may have already taken advantage of the third-party supply market and shopped. JCP&L is still the power delivery company. They still read your meter. They still render your bill. If there is a power outage, JCP&L is still the company responsible for restoring the power. None of that changes. The third-party supplier would render their charges through the JCP&L bill. So folks would still receive one bill from JCP&L. The only difference would be there would be one line item that would be the new supplier's charges replacing JCP&L's charges for power. The delivery charges would still be under JCP&L. And that line item would have a lower charge, so you'd save some money.
So your power is what you're saving money on, not the transmission of the power.
Right, and generally speaking, your bill is roughly 1/3 delivery, 2/3 power supply. So we're talking about the power supply component. Because again, JCP&L, they sold off all their power plants 15, 20 years ago. So for folks who don't have a third-party supplier, they buy the power, but they buy it in the marketplace under state rules. The state Board of Public Utilities tells Jersey Central Power and Light when to bid. They bid every February. They are required to bid 3-year contracts that are staggered. So it's very scripted as to when and how and for what contracts JCP&L buys their power. Whereas a municipality, because a lot of people ask the question, well, how can a municipality with 3 or 4 or 10,000 residential electric accounts, how can they get a better price than JCP&L that may have 1 million electric accounts? It's a good question. And the answer is the way in which JCP&L is required to bid under state rules, which is, again, a specific week every year, 3-year contracts. When a municipality bids, we can pick when you go out to bid, the length of the contract you're asking for, and so that gives you more flexibility in sort of getting the best deal in the marketplace. And that's why we, towns that we've done, again, depending on market conditions, there are times when we come back with bids and the bids don't really produce enough savings, and we simply say, let's take a pass and not award the contract. And there are other times when the savings are quite significant and the town awards a contract and the folks are saving a good bit of money. Some other questions that come up on occasion, some folks are on limited income, they're on an equal payment plan or budget billing plan with JCP&L. The contract terms in this program requires the supplier to offer budget billing, so folks would still get a budget bill. Some folks receive financial assistance on their bill, like low-income heating assistance program, things that are funded through the government. Because you're still receiving a JCP&L bill, those grants or the assistance still comes through the bill. Nothing is affected there, so folks don't lose any of their financial assistance they may get. So it really is kind of it's intended to be a sort of a seamless program where really nothing changes other than your bill goes down a little bit. That really is the purpose of the program. So I don't know, I think I've kind of summarized. I think maybe at this point it'd be best for me to entertain any questions you may have.
Someone has solar, how does that work with this?
Okay, so solar, this is how we handle the programs if we were running a program. So for 2 reasons, what we do is we ask JCP&L to identify who has a solar system on their roof, and we remove them from the program for 2 reasons. One is that most folks with solar, the solar generating system supplies the large majority of your power, usually something like 90% or more. So the remainder you're buying from the grid is very small anyway, so the savings opportunities are small. And secondly, and this gets a little technical, so I apologize, but if you have solar, there are months when you have a solar system, usually in the spring and summer, when the system will be producing more in a month than what you use. And so JCP&L, through structures that the state sets up, will essentially buy back and bank your excess solar production and then credit you in future months. So you get full retail value for the overproduction, if you will, in those months when you produce more than you use. JCP&L can do that because they have a deep pocket of their regulated rates to be able to do that. Third-party suppliers do not. So third-party suppliers are unable to give you that same retail credit when you overproduce. So that's why if someone were under a third-party supply contract, they may jeopardize the full value of some of that overproduction. So in our view, it never makes sense, really. If you have solar, you really are better off being with JCP&L and not being on a third-party supply contract. So what we do when we do a program like this is we proactively pull all the solar accounts out. And we always tell all those folks, you are welcome to come in if you want, but look at your situation first. The vast majority of situations, you're better off just being on JCP&L power.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And your company has handled the Monroe bidding process?
Among many others, yes. We've handled the Monroe.
Old Bridge?
We've done Old Bridge. I won't be able to rattle them all off, but in this area generally, so Colts Neck, Old Bridge, Monroe, and then we've got a bunch out in Hunterdon County. We've got we're just hired in Keansburg, in Monmouth County, and Howell in Monmouth County. We've got a bunch down in Ocean County. Plumstead actually was the very first town to do it in the state. First one to do it in New Jersey, to a GEA program. We ran that program. They're now on their 4th contract. So the general experience has been there's always a little bit of trepidation. Once towns do it, every town that we've done them for has renewed the program and done it a second, and in a few cases a third, and in one case a fourth time.
Thanks.
So, thanks, Robert.
The renewals are for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
The contracts are usually up to 2 years under local public contracts law. An energy contract is limited to an initial term of 24 months. And what we typically do when we go out to bid, we'll ask for pricing for several different contract terms, maybe a 12, an 18, and a 24. Depends on where you are on the time of the year. It may be a 15-month and a 21-month. It really depends on where you are in the year. But it's generally a few different choices of contract terms between 12 and 24. And then you look at the bid results and kind of, the results will tell you what the right contract term is.
So if you're a bigger town, do you get better rates from a third party?
A little bit, but it's not a huge difference, because we've worked with some small towns that have joined together. Example would be Lambertville and West Amwell out in Hunterdon County. They're both individually smaller than Spotswood, and a couple other examples as well. So if you join together, you can get a little better purchasing power. However, you kind of lose a little bit of autonomy and flexibility because now you're coordinating with 2 or 3 other towns. And, by way of example, like Plumstead is quite small, about 2,400 residential electric accounts, so it's smaller than Spotswood. And they've gotten very good pricing. So I would say if you're a really large town, like Monroe's a good example. They're really large, and they also have a lot of electric heating customers there, which tends to get them a little better price because they have more year-round electric usage, where most towns are a little more summer peak oriented. So there's some variation, but so yeah, all things equal, a larger town may get a little better price, but we're talking marginal, not maybe the difference between 8% and 9% savings or something like that.
The aggregation program also includes businesses in there, or just residential?
It can. Our experience has been that really hasn't worked all that well, because the businesses have to actually individually opt into the program. And in our experience, statewide, about 80% of businesses already have their own third-party supply deals. The ones that don't tend to be the smallest mom and pops. So they really, it's hard to even get their attention because the electric bill of a pizzeria or an accounting office or something is very small relative to the other costs of their business. So early on, we did a few programs where we included businesses, and it just didn't work. You really get the best deal by keeping it simple for the residents, keeping it simple and uncluttered, and just focusing on the residential accounts.
Now, sometimes people, when they have their bills, they have deposits on their bills, right? So how does that work if they switch to another party?
Deposits.
In terms of billing?
Somebody opening a new account may have to put it in.
With JCP&L, unaffected. So if you have, to start, if you don't have a prior record with JCP&L, you put up, a couple $100. They're still holding that in escrow, and nothing changes there. So whenever they finally return that, it would be unaffected by this. This doesn't affect anything in terms of JCP&L's world, if you will. Yeah.
Good, John.
I want to say something. Maybe it's crazy, maybe not. If you were here now, you're operating, how would you stand, your figures right now, how would your numbers would be? High, low, with this JC now?
Right now?
Yeah.
If we bid today, based upon bids I've seen, we would get a price lower than the JCP&L tariff.
What do you figure, just over your top?
So I'll just, I hate to, because, markets change, and by the time we were out to bid, it could change. But, I would say it would probably be right now between 5 and 10%, maybe hopefully a little closer to 10%. But again, markets, this is a long process. You have to go through all these regulatory steps. So if you passed the ordinance tonight and started the program, you wouldn't be out to bid for at least 2 or 3 months. And the markets can change. We could have a cold winter, market prices could go up, or vice versa.
The stock market, up, down.
Yeah, kind of, it's like that. But
Commodity market.
But not quite as volatile as that.
I just say,
But if you're asking me for like a general order of magnitude range, I would say that's probably where we'd land, somewhere in there.
all right.
Is there a best time to go out to bid?
There used to be more in the energy markets. I would say less so now. Because what happens is energy markets can move pretty swiftly with market condition, with say weather conditions, more in like the short-term market, spot market. When you're going out to bid for, say, a 2-year contract that starts, wouldn't start till even, say, March or April of next year, so it's going into from the spring of, say, 2018 to the spring of 2020. Suppliers in that case are going out into the futures market and buying power a year, 2, 3 years out. That market tends to be a lot more stable. It doesn't move as drastically with short-term conditions. So, I mean, all things equal, the general rule of thumb in the energy markets used to be spring and fall were the sort of the low points in the marketplace. But there's so many things that can alter that. The way we normally do bids is because there's so many steps in the regulatory process, you sort of, whenever you start, and then you wind up out to market. And the way we do the bids, and in fact, we've had several right now we're in the middle of, where if the market doesn't quite work, we design the bid specs to keep the bid open for a period of a few months, and then we can accept refresh pricing from the suppliers when market conditions may change. And we've found a lot of times that first time out, you do a bid and the results aren't quite where you want them to be, and our advice is usually let's hold off. And then we keep it open for a few months, reprice, and in some cases, we've gotten much better pricing 3 or 4 months later. So you have that flexibility, again, that JCP&L doesn't have, to pick and choose your spots. And, if you don't land the first time, that's okay. You can leave it open and try again in a few months.
Okay. What's the cost of a bid spec? Is there a cost associated with it?
So the way our business model is that we would propose like a really, really, really small per kilowatt hour fee that the supplier would pay us. So when we would only get paid if you guys award a contract, and then the supplier would pay us, and they would put that little fee, they would include it in their bid price presumably. But that fee tends to be 1 or less than 1% of the price. It's a really small percent of the total. So there's no outlay on the part of the town to engage consultant services, and the risk is on us. If the bid doesn't come back favorable, then we don't get paid. So
Okay.
It's performance based.
Anyone else? All right, at this time, is there anybody from the public that would like to address this? Come on up, Cheryl.
Who would get the signatures from all the residents?
There's no signatures required. That's really the point of an ordinance, is really the town is acting on the residents' behalf. But each individual resident would get a mailing. If a contract was awarded, every resident would get a mailing giving all the details of the contract. The name of the supplier, the length of the contract, the price, how it compares to JCP&L. And then you would be given the opportunity to indicate if you don't want to be in the program, you could either send back a postage.
So there is an individual request for each.
Right, to remove yourself from the program, right. But you don't have to, if you want to be in and just take the savings, you don't have to do anything.
I have 3 questions.
Yes, ma'am.
When you say government energy aggregation program, is that the state government or the federal government?
That's our government.
It's actually municipal government.
That's us.
Oh,
We're creating the program.
It's a bid process that's done by your municipal government under the oversight of state regulations, but it's the local government that's actually doing the bidding and making the decisions. Because right now, the state government is making that decision for you, essentially.
okay. And the second question is, what happens when a hurricane strikes and the power is out?
So exactly the same as now, hopefully faster than maybe in the past. JCP&L is still the delivery company. They own, maintain the wires. That doesn't change. This really is the source of power from out remotely, but the actual physical infrastructure is still owned and maintained by JCP&L. They're still regulated by the Board of Public Utilities, and they're responsible for keeping the lights on.
And if the Board of, third and final question, if the Board of Public Utilities has all of these restrictions on JCP&L, why don't they change it to make JCP&L more flexible?
I think the point is that they really don't necessarily want JCP&L in the supply business. It's what's called a default service. So basically, there's a competitive market where folks can avail themselves of it either individually or through their town. The JCP&L price is sort of almost like a backup, a last resort. And the state, and this goes way, way back when the whole system was changed 20 years ago, and actually at the time I worked for the BPU, so I kind of know what the thinking was, is they wanted them to do longer term contracts just to provide price stability, because longer term contracts, they may not be the lowest price at any given time, but they provide for more price stability. So they just wanted a a backup plan for JCP&L to have sort of a stable, predictable price for folks who don't want to get involved in the third-party supply market. They really don't necessarily want JCP&L to be acting like third-party suppliers or even like the town would.
As you say, 20 years have gone by. Maybe now the Board of Public Utilities would want to revise that plan.
Well, I mean, that's something I guess they can always look at. That's, that's their prerogative.
Thank you, Cheryl. Ed? Answered?
Answer your question.
Yes, I do ask a question about businesses. Mine was going to be about commercial accounts.
Okay. Anyone else?
And Ed, if I may, I guess you weren't here when we first explained this. The third-party energy, a lot of us get our phone calls during dinner time. Would you like to get your power lowered? This is a way to do it where you should be able to get a better rate, and when you were locked into a third-party agreement individually, they would give you a teaser rate to get you in, and you've heard horror stories where a few months later your rate goes up, but you're locked in for a period of time. Here, if I'm correct, a resident can opt out at any point.
Correct, and thank you, Councilman, for reminding me, because that really is an important point. As I said, the contract itself is actually run through the BPU to make sure it's got all the protections, and it has a lot of protections that, there have been some bad experiences in the third-party supply market, no question. Exactly as you said, Councilman, where a pretty common tactic is suppliers will give you a very good, they call it a teaser rate, right? It's good for 3 or 6 months, and then it goes to quote-unquote market, and they start gouging you. And also, a not uncommon ploy is to have kind of like the cell phones and things like that, where they'll have a early termination fee. So now you got tricked into this deal, the price went up, but if you try to get out before a year or 2 years, they're going to hit you with a $100 penalty or something like that. These kind of programs, the contracts, the town sets the contract terms, and people bid on it. And so it prohibits termination fees. It allows folks explicitly to get out anytime they want if they just change their mind and not be penalized at all. And the price is established and can't be just fluctuate with the marketplace. So all the bad lessons from the third-party supply market are incorporated in terms of protections into this type of program, which kind of sets it apart. Yes, ma'am.
If the municipality accepts or goes into this contract, is there a minimum number of residents that have to sign up in order to get the best?
It's a good question. The answer is no. That is the supplier's risk. Suppliers do enough of these deals that they sort of have a good idea how many people will participate, and they sort of build it into their financial models. So the answer is no, there's no minimum amount. If 90% of the people in town decided to get out, they'd still have to honor the price for the remaining 10%.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And what happens to the people that opt out?
They just go back to JCP&L. Like you want to, if you haven't done a shop now for third-party supply, you get your delivery from JCP&L and you get your power from JCP&L. So folks that opt out, they just stay with JCP&L for power supply.
So how can you deliver cheaper than JCP&L? Because they have to buy it too.
Again, because we can time when we go in the marketplace and we can pick the length of the contract that gets us the best value. And again, if we can't get a better deal than JCP&L, then the town doesn't award a contract and there's nothing changes. So they only award a contract if the price is lower. If we've done our job and sort of identified the right time and the right length of the contract to beat JCP&L.
This deal just runs from contract to contract.
Correct. It doesn't automatically, that's another good point. It doesn't automatically roll over like the deals you get into on your own. They sort of go on indefinitely unless you do something to get out. Here, it's a defined length of contract. Let's say it's an 18-month contract. At the end of the 18 months, it ends, and everyone goes back to JCP&L unless the town decides to do the program again and does another bid and awards another contract.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ed?
When that renewal process starts, I guess you guys start to do your homework so that there's no lapse in service, I'm assuming?
Yeah, and it's a long process, so
Right.
we're starting a good 6 to 8 months before they do the
Right,
contract.
right, but what I'm saying is so that hopefully there is no lapse of service where we're going back to JCP&L and then back.
Right, you prefer that. There are
Right.
times when the market just doesn't dictate that. We've had times where we've had contracts end in December, and the market prices are highest in January and February in the energy market. So there have been times when we've bid for a contract starting at the same time the last one ends in December, but the pricing wasn't any good, so we would have a lapse and then pick up the contract in April or something like that. So you let the market dictate.
Okay, good, thank you.
Your power doesn't go out, it just goes back to JCP.
Nothing changes, yeah.
I was just wondering if there was,
Yeah, it's a lot of,
right.
it's a long lead time, there's a lot of
Right,
regulations
right.
you gotta go through, so, yeah.
Right, depending on the contract date, you may roll it right over and it may lapse for a
Correct,
short period of time.
correct.
I also contacted Mayor Slavacek from Helmeta so that it is possible, if we both do the same thing, we could actually group our residents to form a larger pool, so I have to see how that works out. But we're moving ahead to be independent if we have to be.
Anyone else?
Question. Like you were talking about the people who already have third-party contracts and they have early termination fees and the gouging. What if one of our residents is already tied into that third-party agreement and we go out
Right.
the aggregation?
So I was trying to be general and not get too technical, but when I said all residents are included, but in actuality, what the rules say is that anyone who has a third-party supply deal now, they're not included. So JCP&L flags them for us and they get pulled out of the pool. They are, because of just that reason, we don't know what deal they're in, we don't know when it ends, we don't know what the penalties may be. So those folks are left alone. They are told that they're welcome to join the program proactively, but we always, what we'll do is prepare, information, frequently asked questions for the borough's website and other information, and we will advise folks, you're welcome to join if you have a third-party supply deal. You're not initially included, but you're welcome to join. But please read what your deal is first and make sure that you're not going to trigger penalties. Maybe you have to wait 4 more months before you can join. So they're not initially included for that very reason.
So the same thing as the solars, you kind of identify them?
Right, exactly. We've worked with JCP&L over the years, so now they have, when they give us the list of customers, they flag who's solar, who's third-party supply, and they're pulled right out.
Okay, and these residents, when their third-party contract ends, they can opt into our program
Correct.
at any time?
Anytime.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Make a motion to close?
Motion, second.
Second.
Councilman Stollen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Drozd?
Yes.
Councilman Melillo?
Yes.
Councilman Rivera?
Yes.
Council President Ricci?
Yes. This time I move that the ordinance be adopted on second and final reading, published according to law.
Second.
Councilman Stollen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Drozd?
Yes.
Councilman Melillo?
Yes.
Councilman Rivera?
Yes.
Council President Ricci?
Yes.
Okay. We have resolutions on the consent agenda. They're spread out on the table for anyone that wants to take a look at them. Council President, council members, I'll take a motion to accept the resolutions on the consent agenda, resolutions 2017-165 through 2017-169.
Move the resolutions?
Second.
Councilman Stollen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Drozd?
Yes.
Councilman Melillo?
Yes.
Councilman Rivera?
Yes.
Council President Ricci?
Yes. Okay. At this time, comments from the council?
Yeah.
John?
Yes. We got 3 of them over here. All right. All right. October 25th, at the office on the H, the Fire Marshal John Cossack was there, along with Lieutenant Fireman Chris Hogart. Demonstration on fire extinguishers, and it was very good. And Jose Rivera put a demonstration where a fireman puts his uniform on. That was good. Full gear, too. Put it all on. And by the way, October was Fire Prevention Month. It was a good crowd there. About 60-some-odd people, maybe 70. October 29th at the VFW, Mayor Council breakfast. The mayor is top shelf. He's a top chef, that man. Did a good job with the pancakes and everything else. I can go down the line. We had everything. And the council handed out the food. Municipal clerk, Mrs. Pat DiStefano, she was at the door collecting the tickets. And Jackie Palmer, she just played her part. Jackie Palmer.
She was making the pancakes.
And there was about 4 or 5 young girls. They went table to table. I mean, really. Helping the citizens, the residents, the seniors. You want this, you want this, you want that. Very good, very good. They were great. I want to thank the seniors also. Thank the BA, Dawn McDonald, for the bus. Very good. Appreciate that. We all did. And Director Donald Falkenberry. And Larry, the bus driver, Hollander. Got to say it. Very good. It was very nice. And the breakfast is fantastic. Whoever didn't go next year, give it a shot. It's worth it. We had 140 people there. And got to go for it. Now, I got one more. The Tuesday, October 31st, the Halloween party at the Senior Center. That Donna put some, Falkenberg put some, he had some food there. It was great food, across the board. Her staff did a lot of work there. The staff did a lot of work there, and also the seniors there were very happy. About 80% were dressed in costumes, about 65, 70 people. And, you know, it was really great. Got to say, really great. And these junior seniors out there, you got friends and relations. 55 years old, you can join the senior center. Doesn't cost you a penny. There's no fee. There's nothing. You just go, you sign up, and you go. And they'll give you all the details, whatever. No. And on the other hand, Friday, November 10th is Veterans Day. Salute the vets. You got to salute those vets. We need them. And thank God they're home, and hopefully they're in good shape, hopefully. I wish them the best. And the Board of Ed is November the 21st at the high school, 7 o'clock, library. So that's it. That's it, Mr. President.
Thank you, John. Curt?
Thank you, John. I want to thank all the council members for everything they did to make the breakfast a success. And I'll echo what John said about the mayor. Ed shouldered a lot of the responsibility, pre-cooking some 30 pounds of bacon and getting 20 pounds donated. So great job, Ed. I know you worked very hard and long on that.
Thank you.
Very good.
Everybody worked hard.
It was good, very good, very good.
And I thank our contributors, ShopRite, East Brunswick IHOP, Monroe Deli, Helmetta Foods, Top Hat Caterers, Pat Donnelly. He's helped us from the beginning, do a fantastic job and brings equipment as well. Girl Scout Troop, 81956, that was the young girls that were helping everyone. One of the best parts is how they helped the seniors. They would help them get their plates and take it and get refills for them. Very, very nice. VFW Post 4589, we thank them for the use of the hall. CME, Bruce, thank you for a nice plate of sweet treats.
Oh, we love that.
Yes,
Yeah.
that just got
Oh,
stuffed
yeah.
right up. And appreciate everything. Oh, and the important part is for this breakfast, we raised just shy of $1,700. And in the 9 years we've been doing this, we've almost raised $14,000 for the food pantry, and they get it in November when they need it the most for Thanksgiving, and they look forward to that donation that we're able to make to them every year. So thank everyone.
Thank you, Curt.
Okay.
The only thing I have to say is we have the Radio City trip coming up, and Rec may be adding a second bus to this. The first one is sold out already. So if anyone's interested in going to Radio City for the Christmas show, check with Recreation, look on the website. They probably will put up there, they discussed the second bus tonight. Other than that, we have the tree lighting coming up on December 2nd, I believe. Dawn?
Yes.
December 2nd. So please, everyone, come out for that. Other than that, I want to congratulate our attorney, Pat Dignan. He's now doing his full term, his first full term as senator. And also congratulate our new governor and lieutenant governor for January. That's it. Marge?
I hope everybody here came out to vote. That's a very important thing for all of us to do. We are celebrating Veterans Day tomorrow at the Senior Center, November 9th at 1 o'clock. So if you want, there's patriotic music, some speakers that are veterans, reading of different passages, and refreshments for all. And that's it for me. I enjoyed the breakfast. It's always a great time because everybody's out for a good cause, and we all work well together in the kitchen and in serving. And that's it.
Thank you. Jose?
Yeah, I enjoyed the breakfast, and actually, I did put on an apron, okay? for
Yes,
people
he
who-
did.
So I had an apron on. Just following up on John's October 25th, we did fire prevention, the seniors, and we also went to Immaculate, in which we did a presentation of what the firefighters do, how much gear they put on, and also demonstrated the fire extinguishers. And that's about it. That's all I have.
Thanks, Jose. Mr. Mayor?
I'm usually not short for words, but tonight I am. I think everybody pretty much said what they had to say this evening, you know, what's going on, what's coming up. And the breakfast was another success. Enjoyed doing it. Can't wait to do it again next year.
Right.
You deserve the attaboy
But
for it.
I actually want to send it back towards Curt, too, because Curt is also the brainstorm behind this idea to begin with, who started us all doing it, and he does the majority of the work as well. I think we all put in our fair share, but I'd like to think that Curt just does a little bit more than the rest of us.
And his wife Colleen, she's a big help too, I see.
Yeah.
Pat, she's a big help.
Yeah, nobody gets in without paying.
Oh, boy.
All right, is there a motion to open the meeting to the public?
Motion to open to the public.
Second.
Second,
All in
everybody
favor?
second.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
At this time, is there anyone who would like to come forward and discuss anything at all?
Lillian Chinesco, 294 Woods End Court. At the last meeting, I had asked about some of the buildings that were leading to blight within the town. And I had gotten a lot of cooperation from Sherry, who sent out an inspector to the 3 houses, actually 4 places that I had submitted to her. And the results of the inspection showed that the one house had several abandoned cars in the backyard, and they were in the process of removing them, and they asked for the time, which the inspector said they would give him. The second house is for sale, and it's a place that they hope that they could sell it and someone would buy it and fix it up. The third place, there were some violations which the inspector allowed them to take care of. The Brown House, 374 Main Street, the owner was contacted to remove the overgrowth of the vegetation that had kind of covered the house. They did kind of a half-ass job, but they did remove some of that, and I'm sure you don't like it, but...
I like the vegetation, it hides the house.
The house is, I didn't like the vegetation, and it's against the code. And that's about it. But one thing I had to comment that you have the council people and the mayor, and I'm sure that you folks right around town, because the inspector also noticed something on Main Street that nobody has said anything about, and someone had a car pulled up on the lawn and they're selling the car. So he advised the owner of the car, hey, you don't put the car on the lawn to try to sell it like that. It's against the code.
That's actually been brought to Sherry's attention on numerous occasions.
Yes.
They roll through that house, I know which one you're talking about, they roll through a used car every so often in there, whether it's their cars or they're taking some money from people to park a car on the lawn. But that's been addressed to Sherry on a number of occasions about that.
All right, but anyway, that's taken care of. But I'm sure that many of you people ride around town, and you must see violations. You have the sanitation employees. I'm sure somebody that works within the borough should see some things going wrong, and it'd be a good idea if they would at least come back and advise Sherry or ask for some kind of an inspection or to check up on these things. Does anybody ever ride around town and say, hey, they've got junk or their garbage is out, or you have right on Chupin, that very wide double vehicle thing parked out there? Isn't there something that you can do about that?
What wide double thing?
He's got a jet ski trailer parked on his.
It's terrible on that road. I go to visit my daughter, and you can't even turn around there.
I wouldn't assume that we don't. I have over the years many times called Sherry or called Dawn and said, you know, there's a light out or the grass needs to be cut, especially with the sidewalks and people walking to school.
Well, what about encouraging some people to report things? I'm sure doesn't anybody have pride in this town? Don't they say, I don't want my town to look like a dump?
Absolutely.
The problem is most people just, they go through from one end to the other
That's
like
right,
this.
but how can we encourage them to?
Have a little more civic pride, is really what you're saying. Take a little bit more civic pride. It's a wonderful idea. If people did see that and did contact Sherry or did contact code enforcement, it would be fine. Sherry will always take a complaint and give it to the code enforcement people. There's not a time when she won't take one. And as Marge said, you know, there's times that we see things, and I've brought it to Sherry's attention or I've brought it to Dawn's attention in the past. So we do see things and we do comment on them, but we're limited in what we can do. I mean, you know, just like 474, it's legally abandoned. It looks like crap, but it's legally abandoned. There's nothing more that we can do for that other than cut the vegetation down. But you know, you have any properties in town that are on the same level, as long as they meet the code enforcement standard for abandoned properties, they may look like hell, but you have to live with them, unfortunately. You can't force the owner to take $50,000 out of his pocket to level that building off.
Yeah, but he's got to maintain it and have it appear aesthetically pleasing and not in code violation. I agree with her.
In code, not in code violation, but there's nothing that makes it, that he's got to have it aesthetically pleasing.
Well, if he's got to be called out for code violations when they occur on a consistent basis, then perhaps it'll prompt
But the biggest
him
code
to do
violation
something.
there is typically the overgrowth.
Okay.
I mean,
When
he
that
does cut the
grows
grass every
above
couple of
18
weeks,
inches, we can call.
and we do. We get the phone call.
And you know, regarding neighbors reporting neighbors, I've been here on the council and seen many Hatfield and McCoy fights that just escalate and escalate because one neighbor reports one for something, then that one reports. You have to decide if something in your neighborhood is bad enough that you want to have it addressed, that you have to call and address it. But you have to make that judgment call whether it's something that you want to start.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Would anyone else like to come up?
Motion to close?
Second.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, our next council meeting is going to be on Monday, December 4th, 2017, at 7:30 PM. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Seconds. A lot of seconds.
Everybody have a good Thanksgiving.
Everybody have a good,
Absolutely.
everything.